I want to just say, of course, a heartfelt thank you to everyone who's been able to kind of reach out. Actually, I got a couple calls this morning about the same webinar. Not really expecting it to kind of resonate with you all the way it has done. And this has actually resonated with me as well for some personal and professional perspectives. And you will see that coming up in the presentation. All right. So the main objective for me with this is to help people understand that there's a little bit more as it relates to our numbers. And sometimes the numbers that we have, or the challenges that we experience in sales aren't just in two areas, but it's actually across the board in a number of areas. So as we're talking about the numbers, I'm going to kind of jump straight in to indicate here that the biggest problem that I've seen from 2021 all the way to now is that numbers are actually overlooked as it relates to certain things as KPIs, metrics. So we know that we want our sales team as an entrepreneur, because I will be giving a very personal entrepreneurial experience as well. And business owners. So those of us who are on the C-suite side, I think I saw one or two of you in here already. And of course, these sales reps themselves, right? So I'm all three. I've had experience in all three areas. I am all three areas. I'm a salesperson. I run a company, excuse me, and I also and I have, as I say, I've also been able to experience a number of different things as it relates to where these metrics are. The challenge is a lot of our metrics are only done in these two particular areas, right? And those two areas come along the line of when it is that we know that we want to get our sales, we're looking for revenue, we focus heavily on the top and heavily on the bottom. Tofu, bofu, right? If you all know what those things mean, could you please just drop the meaning of those particular acronyms in the chat? But this has actually been a main challenge. Now, I will say it like this too. This is also my challenge. Coming up as a sales rep, that's the only thing that we focused on. Prospecting, getting a particular lead. As a matter of fact, we weren't even talking leads at the time. Everything was just prospecting. And then at the end of it was, how many deals have you actually closed? But that in itself has always been a challenge, because of the fact that when we look at KPIs, so every time I do work with clients, I would normally ask them, so tell me a little bit about your numbers. When I'm doing a training needs assessment or just any sort of assessment, it's important for me to understand where customers are. And all of these varying things are some inconsistencies. Every card that you see here represents one organization. But if you look at the results, it varies based upon what every sales rep, in some instances, it's 7, 9, 12, right? I have others where it was bigger teams. Every sales rep has a different understanding as to what his or her KPI is. So that clarity is not there at all. And that really comes from the sales managers. It comes from the leadership. It comes from the unclear strategy of what we need to focus on. The same thing applies for us as entrepreneurs as well, because based upon what the goals are, the goal should be able to set the KPIs. But if we're not focused properly on what those KPIs are, then we will always tend to focus on the top and the bottom. How much you're getting on top, how much you're getting at the bottom, and nothing else really and truly in between. Here's another area that too, and this would resonate well with especially those who are in the leadership position from on the sales side. When we ask questions as to how often do you hit your targets, again, if you look at all of these cards that represent different organizations, you have different companies experiencing different things as it relates to revenue numbers. The same thing applies for entrepreneurs as well. It's sometimes very inconsistent in our business. And again, I'm speaking from a personal example as well, because of the fact that tofu, bofu, but we have sales reps who are varied. So if you're looking at some of these colors here, some of these colors represent every other month, twice a month, twice a year. And you have some people who are just not sure as to when do they hit their targets. Now, this in itself is a real serious thing, all right? And it's serious in a number of different areas, because if we're looking at what the impact of that is, then the impact for us is going to come in our pockets. All right. Let's take a look at it from the company standpoint. All right. Things like longer sales cycles, lower conversion ratios, all these are nice fancy terms, right? Inefficient lead qualification. And I purposely put this here because yes, it's cool to talk the sales terminologies, and some of us may or may not understand what they mean. But if we want to start getting a little realer to the situation, let's start with the one at the bottom, where I've seen where organizations are hitting targets, but their profits are low. Why? Because there's a particular metric that they're not paying attention to, or they're not looking at the full gamut of the entire business. So when people understand as to when, and we do have a guest here by the name of Andrea Ragu. I'm actually going to introduce her to you all in a little bit. But when you have folks from a CFO standpoint, looking at where the numbers are, what are some of the main things that you think that they will actually do? They will either increase prices, or they may look at pushing to get more sales reps, et cetera, but not really understanding that there are certain things within your sales process. And we do this as entrepreneurs as well. We recognize that we would have gotten some success. And what do? We boost more, not really understanding as to, did we really do a very good or very efficient job? Here's a realer scenario, and these are things that I would have been experiencing over the last 12 months so far. And these are the real side of things, right? So missed commissions, whether you're hitting a number or not, based upon how you operate by not paying attention to certain metrics. You could be making commissions, but you could also be missing commissions. At the same time, you could be missing commissions altogether. By missing commissions, you are unable to pay yourself or pay your staff, fix your car, you're juggling bills, and et cetera, because these are the money, the commission, the end result is what we are looking for as a sales rep, as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, whoever you are on this call with us today. It's because we want to be able to earn something, to be able to live a particular lifestyle while doing what we like. And what we like was what is the business that we're involved in. But the return that we're getting sometimes isn't favorable enough to give us the lifestyle that we're looking for. And this is where I've seen a lot of the challenges. So when I have a conversation with a sales rep or an entrepreneur, and they're telling me about their numbers, say, boy, Lyndon, boy, I've broken this month. That's a real conversation as almost 3-4 weeks ago. Or people can't make enough money to come to a sales meeting, or you have a sales rep that's doing extremely well, but when you really look at their performance, you realize that it's kind of expensive. Those are things that we have to pay attention to. So it's good on the sales rep side, it looks good on the company side, but when you really get deeper into the books, you might have a loss in profits. Do you understand why that might actually be? Maybe not, because we're not paying attention to the metrics. Let me give you another real example here, right? So most of you all know that I'm a HubSpot partner. I've been a HubSpot partner since the end of 2020. And the reality of that is I was also in and out of the HubSpot program within the first 5 months of me joining. So at the end of December 2020, I decided to move up to become a HubSpot partner from a HubSpot provider. And this was based upon certain things that I had forecasted. And with me forecasting it, I decided, okay, this is what the projected revenue is. This is what I believe it's supposed to be. I believe I could now make that investment moving forward. So I pulled the trigger, made the investment. Within 5 to 6 months, by June of the following year, 2021, I was out of the program. Why? Because I couldn't pay HubSpot. I also couldn't pay myself. I had to start crunching back on the team. If you look at where the second line, where the arrow is, you will see here, I'm actually indicating that I'm waiting for something. I'm waiting for a customer to sign off on a contract that they said that they will sign off on. Because one of the KPIs, or one of the things that one of the challenges I only had that one deal in my pipeline. And that one deal, as much as it was nice and lucrative, and yes, the customer made a verbal commitment, customer didn't follow through. Yeah. So I literally had all my eggs in one basket. And that is something that I see very often. But then at the same time, I also see where people don't even understand as to how much should you have in your pipeline at any one point in time. So again, I'm raising this as an actual scenario. These are real scenarios because all of us in this room, we have particular goals and responsibilities. We want to do certain things for 2024, but I want us to understand that we should not just be focusing on the top of the funnel and the end of the funnel, because there are certain things that we may be doing extremely well that we can improve on to improve on our conversion ratios and sales cycles. But then we also have to understand what are those other things in the middle of the sales cycle that we need to be paying attention to. So what's the solution? Well, the solution could be a varied number of things, right? So, but the main thing is we have to be better equipped at understanding our numbers. And that is where, coming out of what I experienced in 2021, I said, this is never going to happen to me again. And I made a commitment to that. But the first thing that I had to do is that I took my time and I wrote out everything that I was experiencing, that I experienced. And I kind of mapped out why I had that problem. And I worked it back. I went back and I looked at all my numbers. I looked at my customers. I looked at my leads. And I said, you know what, Lyndon? You were missing out on particular KPIs. And this is the same thing that's happening now for entrepreneurs, based upon whatever industry that you are in. And it is also happening in sales environments. And the unfortunate part of it too is that we have folks who are leaders in sales environments, managers, VP of sales, etc., but they do not seem to have an understanding or could properly explain to the reps where some of those gaps are. So my attempt with you all today is to go through this particular section here. So we're going to be going straight into the Excel spreadsheet. And from there, I will be walking you all through exactly what we should be looking at as it relates to better understanding our numbers. So if I have set the stage, if I've captured your attention, what you can do for me, you can just drop attention captured or sage stat in the chat as we move forward. If that was a good opener, you can tell me if that was a good opener. All right. So first thing first, top of funnel, middle of funnel, bottom of funnel, they are all real world scenarios in our sales. And we do get caught up a lot of the times by just focusing on the top. So that's where we're going to stay. And what this Excel is going to show you all, this template is going to show you all as to how exactly do we now expand on the other areas so that we, especially as sales leaders and sales professionals and entrepreneurs, could have a much better appreciation as to our business. So here's an example of someone having a revenue target of approximately $680,000. I'll use myself as an example with this. So let's say this is me, all right? So the target for 2024 is $680,000. And that is what I would like to achieve at the end of the year. Actually, let me add it to this. I had a conversation with the bank not too long ago, and I said, you know what? I'm interested in purchasing a home. And on average, the average price of a home starts at 1 point something million, 1.1, 1.2, for those of you all who are focusing on or following the industry. And I asked her, I said, well, what does that have to be? Like, what should my qualifying income be? What would be the monthly mortgage, et cetera, et cetera? I spoke to 2 institutions and they gave me some really astronomical figures, right? So they said, Lyndon, one institution said your consistent monthly income should be $21,000 a month. It's like, shit, right? And the other one said it's going to have to be around $16,000 a month. Like, all right. But remember, they want to see that consistently coming in. They're not just looking at how many contracts you would have closed, but they're looking for a consistent stream of revenue. So in my mind, I'm thinking, how much do I have to sell to be able to achieve that? And how should my sales look as we go through the process of achieving X? All right. So this doesn't tie directly back into that, but because of the things that I personally want to achieve, and let's say an organization wants to achieve, that is how we should be thinking. Like, how does my goals for next year, how better, no matter how big or small, whether it's education, travel, etc., how does that move? And how do I now work towards achieving some of those sales? So first thing first, so we know what the target is. The other part of it is that what do we need to sell to achieve that target? Like, what is our average deal size? And average deal size, one of the first KPIs. So for those of us who are sales reps, you will receive a target, and sales managers, you will receive your target from your seniors. So the head of the organization will give a target to the sales team. The manager will give a target to the sales reps. So whatever your target is, one of the first things that you would then need to find out or pay attention to in all of your KPIs is not just your revenue number that you have to hit or the number of units that you have to sell for the year, but really start looking at what is my average deal size? What has been my sweet spot over the last couple of years in terms of what is it I really sell well? Or how much or do I now put together my bundles, my offerings, so that I can make something that makes my life, that helps me achieve my target in the best possible way. So average deal size is one. The other one that you need to pay attention to, apart from just average deal size, is your ideal customer profile. So this is where people trip up a lot, right? Because a lot of sales reps go all over the place. You give them you give them the targets. They have an idea as to what their pricing sheet is. They just run all over the place, sometimes just trying to talk to everybody. And we do this sometimes as entrepreneurs as well, because even when we're generating certain types of content or we are doing our outbound prospecting, we tend to just, even if you're doing lead gen, you tend to put a lot of lead generation stuff out there without even beginning to tell the people who you are looking for as an ideal customer. And that is extremely important. So your ideal customer is tied into your average deal size. And that could be via industry, it could be via revenue type, it could be via services, it could be via geographical. It is based upon what business you are in. It is important that apart from average deal size, so if you're writing it down, I want to see, maybe the first thing you should write down is average deal size being the first one. And then the second one should be your ideal customer profile. Because if you look at what I did here, if you have $30,000 being the average deal size at 680,000 for the year, then it means I have to sell at least 2 pieces of equipment or 2 services per month to bring me anywhere close to 24 deals or 23 deals for me to be able to achieve this. That's the first thing. That's the basic one. But the 2 most important KPIs are, who am I selling it to based upon could they afford this, or what is the demographic, or where are they, right? The other part of that is understanding too, how long does it take to close an opportunity? Now, this also is something that I had to learn the hard way as a sales rep and also as a sales manager, because every deal, every time we talk to a customer, we figure go and close now. But unless we really start paying attention to our sales cycle, the sales cycle is a very key component to understanding where we need to be as it relates to deals that's going to close now or in a month from now or 2 months from now. Let me give you an example. Let's take a look at, let's say, software sales. These are just 3 random examples. So let's say folks who are looking to close deals in December of 2023, but you have a 90-day sales cycle, right? Then it means that you should have been speaking to your customers in September. Now, we understand that there are instances where some customers will move really, really quickly towards closing an opportunity, but it doesn't mean, and no disrespect to anybody, it doesn't mean that you just did an excellent job to accelerate the sale. It actually means that the customer in their buying journey would have already made a certain number of decisions, put aside budget, and they are just ready to pull the trigger. Something may have happened to accelerate their purchasing decision, or they would have taken enough time from before to make a decision, and you just caught them at the right time. So again, I'm not trying to negate anybody's sales skills, but we have to factor in that sometimes when we're closing deals real quick, is because the customer would have already gone through a particular process for themselves towards understanding where they are. So if we're looking at, you want to close opportunities in 2024, if you're sticking to what your average sales cycle is, and this is another thing that we have to pay attention to, right? Because I've had sales managers back in my sales rep days, I will be down my throat at the end of the month. Hey, do you think that we If we give the customer a couple points extra as a discount if they'll close now, and I would always have to say to my manager, no, they're not going to close now. And I couldn't understand why he couldn't understand that, but I understand the pressures on him to close the numbers, because I had to tell him the customer isn't ready yet. They are going through a particular process. And if you look at all of our sales of this type, of this value, it goes through a cycle, right? Whether you're selling cars, whether you're doing homes, whatever it is, there is a process. And the more you begin paying attention to the process, you will understand where you need to start your sales because of where you want your sales to end up. And salespeople are the only people, entrepreneurs too, who have the unique ability to tell their superiors how much they need to get paid every month. But if you're not doing that and you're forecasting sales this month for this month, but you have a 45-day lead time, or you have a 30-day lead time, or you have a 180-day lead time, look at insurance, look at real estate. Talking to a couple of my real estate colleagues, Brent, I'm not sure if he came in as yet on the call, but Brent was telling me it's sometimes maybe about 5 to 6 months. So if Brent needed to close anything in January, it means that Brent should have been having that conversation since in July, because there are certain things that happens in his sales cycle between the customer and just the process of closing. So again, not fooling ourselves by talking to a customer now and we say, yeah, the customer going to the bank or they're doing this, that, and the third. Everyone goes through a process. On average, for me, it's at least 90 days. Sometimes it could be as little as 60 days. But my customers for HubSpot, for sales training, sometimes they go through a particular process, especially when it comes to things like sales enablement. It goes through a process towards closing the opportunity, and it is very important that we understand what those things are. So that is metric number 3. Understanding what your average sales cycle is extremely important. And I put together this because I wanted folks to just be able to now come in and manipulate it. You look back from the first time you spoke to some of your customers and when they closed, you put that number in here, it will change, it will begin telling you what you need to be doing and when. Let's flip back now. So now that we understand what the average sales cycle is, the other metric that we need to pay attention to is closing ratios. Closing ratios. How often have we had, as a matter of fact, let me say it like this. Closing ratio is one particular metric, and those metrics are in the middle and end, almost to the end of the funnel. All right, because closing ratio means that when we are actually now trying to close the customer after they've given us a quotation, but it's not the final stages yet because they have not signed off. There's no commitment to the entire thing. So the closing ratio now is a big component, because guess what the closing ratio does? The closing ratio tells us how much work we have to do, not just when. The average sales cycle tells us when we need to get busy, or from how far ahead we need to get busy to close deals at this particular time. But your closing ratio gives us our idea of volume. It also tells you, it tells the sales manager, it tells the entrepreneur, how good are we at closing? So let's look at this one as an example, right? So that is metric number 4. So the metric that we're looking at here is closing ratio, and we're looking at something called 10 to 1 here. It means that we have to go through 10 people to close one deal. Now, based upon your industry, that might be good. Based upon other industries, that might be bad. Andrea and I will have a conversation about that, because we know I'm familiar with one industry where a particular sales rep had to generate thousands of leads to only have a 12% closing ratio. Is that good or is that bad? That's for the organization to identify, but the organization did not have any idea that that was needed. However, some of their colleagues, though, generated 50% of that and had a little bit of a better closing ratio. So which means the one who's selling a lot, but she's selling a lot at a very expensive rate, as opposed to the ones who are doing a little bit less, but their conversion ratios are a little bit higher. So they're a little bit more efficient, and those things tie into your cost. Because look at it from an entrepreneurial standpoint, if you think that all you need to be doing is boosting and giving Facebook and Instagram your money, fine, you go ahead and you do that, right? But how is that costing you? Because how much time do you have to put in to speak to those people to qualify them or disqualify them. Those are things that you have to factor in. And based upon the time, are those 9 additional leads bad leads? Or were those 9 additional leads good leads that you didn't get to touch, that you did not get to touch, and they ended up going somewhere else? Again, it's not for me to answer, but it's for you to identify, because it means that that person has a challenge in closing. It also indicates to us that when we're looking at the monthly qualified leads, so the Excel is designed in such a way, if your closing ratio is 10, it means that you need to see 19 people. You need to have at least 19 qualified leads in your pipeline, quotations in hand, contract in hand, to just close 2 deals, because you're not very good at closing. Yeah. So this is one area for me that it became very clear that I need to get better at properly getting commitments from my customers throughout the sales process, right? Identifying any red flags that they may stick me, because again, I did not want to have another repeat of what I had in 2021, right? So even the way I spoke to customers changed, because I wanted to get a better commitment from them, and I didn't want to have to be doing a lot of work. Because if we're looking at it from here, we are also seeing that apart from just the 19, you also have to identify approximately 126 unqualified leads, because again, you're going to have some who are not good. And if we're looking at the industry average is 15% conversion. 15% of everything that you generate during the course of your period may actually be better leads. And the final conversion is really now down to the skill set of the sales rep. So for the managers who are here, do you pay attention to your closing ratios? You can drop your responses in the comments. You can let us know as to how that resonates with you. But if it does resonate and you choose not to do it, again, it doesn't matter to me. I just wanted to understand the importance of this, because you are going to be spending money, right? Whether you're spending it on your sales rep, or whether you're a sales rep or as an entrepreneur, you are spending it to do all of your boosting and your posts and your hiring social media personnel. Even if you are working with agencies, are the agencies generating leads? Great. But are they generating leads of a targeted segment or a targeted amount, whether they're qualified or unqualified? Again, these are the things that you need to be paying attention to as you're going in, or just as you're doing business in general. Let's just change up the closing ratio a little bit. Let's just say we have a 5% closing ratio. I want you all to pay attention to what's happening on the right side of the screen. Notice that it's dropped to 9. So this looks a little bit better, but it means that the sales rep has to be better in terms of identifying the right leads, in terms of the ideal customer profile, qualifying them properly, getting those quotations out. This, for me as a sales manager or as a sales rep, looks better, because I could see myself having, I at least need to have 9 good deals in my system, in my pipeline, so that if one doesn't happen, I can still hit my 2. Because if it's 19, it's too much. And I can't see my sales rep having to manage 19 potential things. Now, they may be very good, but at the same time, I just find that may not be 100% realistic, right? So, and if you look at everything else, it means that even your spend in terms of your efficiency, in terms of how you want to spend on your marketing and et cetera, how does that tie back into your generating of your leads in the bigger part of the funnel, and then gradually coming down? Because when it begins coming down, this is where you now have to store. This is where your sales training kicks in, right? This is where, like if you really want to be granularly focused on the areas of improvement with your sales team, these are some of the areas that you have to pay attention to. So I think my boy Jared is here. So Jared and I, when customers telling us prospecting is the issue, when you pay attention to stuff like this, prospecting isn't the issue. There are other areas that you need to pay attention to that represents your sales process. And unless you understand those metrics, because qualified and unqualified leads are particular metrics that you need to pay attention to, and they're here. That 15% conversion ratio, it is a real thing. How many quotes do you, sometimes I ask customers, well, how many quotes did you send out over the last quarter? Or how many quotes did you send out this month? As opposed to how many closed. Sometimes they don't know. They have to go and flip back through the thing. And sometimes it's on paper. That is a waste of time, and it's also a waste of money. So this is where I want to bring Andrea in, because Andrea isn't just Andrea. If you're familiar with Andrea Ragu is a virtual CFO. She's also my main consultant. Everything I talk to Andrea about as relates to my company and money and stuff like that, cash flow, I go through Andrea. Ideas that I may have, and Andrea has seen some of the journeys that I've actually gone through, and she isn't also just a CFO from an organizational stand. She's also an entrepreneur. So some of this might actually resonate with her. So Andrea, I want to bring you in a little bit, all right? And you could just maybe give the group an idea as to some of the things that I would have heard there. I would have mentioned, sorry, and anything that you think that, as entrepreneurs and also as business professionals, you want to pay attention to.
All right. Good morning. Audio check. We good to go? Hearing me okay?
Good to go.
Good morning.
All right. Okay. Good morning, everyone. All right. So, what Lyndon here is speaking about is he's talking about the sales side, but it definitely has a finance and more specifically a cash flow impact. So the first thing I want to highlight is the metric where he spoke about that revenue goal, right? That 680,000, the average deal size. You have to consider how much effort are you going to, who it is are you going to target with that to get that 30,000, because you need a specific type of customer to achieve this deal size. If you're targeting the wrong customer, the wrong ICP, and your deal size is not the 30,000 that you set it out to be, you're going to end up in a target problem. You're going to end up in cash flow problem, because you're not going to be turning over the amount of cash that you thought that you were going to get, right? The sales cycle, right, which leads me to the sales cycle. When you have these long sales cycles and you're taking all this effort to close deals that are probably less than ideal, less than the what you really want to achieve, it's going to lead to inefficiencies. It's going to lead to wasted effort. It's going to lead to money going down the drain. So the sales cycle is an indicator of how your cash flow is going to be impacted. Because if you're putting effort behind a 90-day close, what happens on day 60? What happens on day 30? Before we hit that 90-day mark where the customer says yes, how are you generating your cash flows during that time? So the sales cycle actually impacts your cash flow and impacts how you are operating your business. Because if, as Lyndon said, you want to target posts, you want to, boost posts, and you want to put some marketing behind it, if you're not generating the cash, where are you going to get the cash flow in order to do that? So I'll just say that for now, Lyndon, we're going to pull apart that little bit, right, in terms of the sales cycle and how I see it as having, a big impact on entrepreneurs and even the companies at large, their cash flow cycles. It has a real impact. You're on mute.
Yeah, so the aspect that we really want to get across to everyone within the space is that do not go into your new year without really paying attention to looking at how are you closing 2023. All right, just look at my scenario, right? How are you closing 2023 to go into 2024? Some of you all would have already had financial years that would have already started. Yeah. If you are building a pipeline, are you building a pipeline from the right customer set? Are you focusing on the right values that you want to have as it relates to your business? I've had teams that have been able to successfully build where initially these guys, and they were only focusing on these simple things to sell until I really started to show them, one, how to go about selling the right things, and then having that mix in their pipeline and the volume in the pipeline, so that if something doesn't happen, you're not going to be left exposed as it relates to not having the income. From on a sales management side as well, these particular KPIs, this is how you do performance improvement. Like sales managers that are in the room, you need to have a proper understanding that sometimes your sales is not because your sales rep can't sell or not, they're not prospecting or they can't close. Sometimes their efforts might be a little bit misguided in the middle of the funnel. And that is
Absolutely.
that's it's a very important thing to understand, because the example I was just giving there before was that, and this is going to come in a follow-up webinar when we start to talk about lead management, because lead management ties back into your revenue, right? Just to give you a little bit of a plug, there's a scenario where poor lead management cost an organization some millions of dollars as well, because they didn't understand what to pay attention to in terms of how they manage your leads. And again, that is where the expensiveness. So when you're looking at training, understanding, shoots, my guys need to do a better job in managing the leads, managing the deals. Lead management, deal management is important, because sometimes it's not a matter of they're not bringing it in. It's just that they're so overwhelmed, they don't have a sales process, a sales strategy to follow up on what they originally had. And as most of you might already know, sometimes the best kind of revenue comes from the revenue that you already had. Now, there's something that we haven't mentioned as yet, and it's here. Everything that you're seeing here in this is an Excel. This is going to be coming to you all. You all have access to it. Cost of customer acquisition is a real thing. And sometimes the cost of the acquisition of that customer comes from the efficiencies or inefficiencies of your organization. I'm not going to blame the sales rep. It could just be a matter of processes, right? Things that we actually do, and the money that we spend, the efforts that we put out there. And those are things that we have to pay attention to. Now, it's not a simple thing, but it's also not rocket science. It just requires you now being a little bit more analytical and taking some time to note these things. Yeah. So in the Excel, it's broken out in a number of different ways. So if you'll notice that it's the same thing, but for those of us who are in automotive, then this is here for you. And the good thing is that you could actually put your commissions inside of here. So you will realize that if your commissions is, let's say, 1.5%, you're selling $300,000 one of your vehicles, you have to do 22 million because you have to sell 75 cars for the year, 6 a month. Then 10 to 1, kind of expensive. What do you need to do? And how can your sales manager, how can your company help you in terms of bringing leads in, helping you pre-qualify those leads, passing them on to the sales team for the sales team to then qualify the leads and close the leads better to maybe get a 5-to-1 ratio. Your number's not going to change to the top, but what's going to change definitely is how you work down to the bottom, how much work you have to put in down to the bottom to get the same type of result down to the end here. Again, it's all dependent upon how we do our stuff and how we measure our respective KPIs. Yeah, real estate folks.
And then if I could just touch in right here, I just want to emphasize the closing ratio, that effort that you need to put out, right? We talked about, I think on one of the previous ones, it was 10 to 1. I think now you're saying it's 5. But what I want people to understand is that speaks to how efficient you are. And the thing about it is efficiency, or being inefficient, I should say, equals wastage of money, right? It means you're taking effort behind, if you go back to the 10 to 1, you're taking effort behind 9 people that are not going to close, right? So this is why sometimes you feel like you've made your targets, right? This is where, from a organization standpoint, they may meet the targets, but they're not making the profits, because from an operational standpoint, money is walking out of the door. And let me give you practical examples of how that is happening. So that could be seen in the salesman having to visit these 9 people, right? These 9 people that are not going to buy. So that's 9, how many hours of time that you would have spent talking to them, traveling to get to their location. That might be the gas that you come back and you submit, because you might be claiming on that. Or if you're an entrepreneur, you're spending that out of your pocket, right? There's the gas, there's the time, there's the effort that you take to maybe do 9 proposals or 9 quotations. There's the paperwork and the effort behind that. If all of these things have a cost, some of it will result in cash coming out of the door, some of it will result in, and it filters all the way back to your profitability. So this is why there's a bad cycle, because now you're looking at, well, I made my sales, right? The person might have made their sales, but yet still next year, you're giving them a larger target. This is where management now feels that, well, the only way for us to hit the profitability, the profit mark is to increase the target. Because as much as we made the target last year, we still didn't make our profit target. And it is because the inefficiencies in the operations is bleeding money, right? And just to bring it home, the analogy that came to mind just now, cricket. I don't know, I mean, how many of you here are cricket fans, right? I watch a lot of cricket. My husband loves cricket. And when you talk about the batsmen and the bowlers, they talk about the ones who are heavy hitters. You may score high, but especially in T20, if your strike rate is low, you're not really a valuable player. Who is valuable? The batsman that has a strike rate of over 100. Why? Because they're being efficient. They're not, what that means is that every ball that they hit is going to the boundary, or the majority of their balls are going to the boundary. So it's not a matter of them making 60 or 80 runs. It's a matter of how efficient are you to get it. And on the flip side, on the bowling side, they talk about the economy of the bowler. The bowler might take plenty wickets, yes, but how many runs did they have to expend to get those wickets? And you find that the ones that have the cheaper economy rate or the lower economy rate, they are the ones that are seen to be the greatest. And they of course, in franchise cricket, they probably pay more for them. But I just wanted to draw that analogy to kind of get you to understand, when we say economy and when we say efficiency, that's what we're talking about. The target doesn't move, right? The target is not the issue. It's how much work and how much effort are you expending behind the target, because every effort has a dollar value behind it. So I just wanted to make sure that we understand that perspective.
Yeah, so I want to ask this question, all right? For those of us, especially the sales reps, even the managers, how many of you all have that experience where you get a target, your target is increased by, an additional 30%, or 10%, or 15%, and you're there wondering what the hell, and the justification is, well, yeah, we hit the number, but we want to be able to hit the profit because, of course, we have stakeholders to take care of, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, you're looking at it from on that end, but look at it, even as an entrepreneur, you are your own stakeholder. So sometimes you might think that you need to do more, and you just get a lot busier when really and truly we're not as efficient. But so how many of you all have actually experienced that, where your boss come and say, we need to go up by X amount, and you there scratching it like, where the hell am I gonna find that extra revenue, So you can drop that in the thing if you've had those experiences, but yeah, those are real scenarios. I do remember a former CEO telling us we needed to increase our sales, and we were scratching our heads because I didn't know where to get it from. But we went back to two things. We were able to find that based upon the ideal customer profile, and we were able to find the additional business based upon the average deal size that a specific group of people were purchasing. And it made our work a lot easier, because the ability to close those deals within that particular time was shorter, because we already had experience in the industry. We were talking the talk, which is also a very good point too, right? The point I want to indicate with that is, as you look through this, as you sit down and you may be thinking, shoots, where do I even start with this? Sometimes you just start with the history of your sales. A lot of the information, a lot of the things about the ideal customer, what is your average deal size, etc., is already in your system. You have it, whether it's in an Excel, whether it's in wherever it is, right? In some sort of software, it's there. Whether you can pull it up or you have to ask your CFO or your accountant to pull it up for you, but it is there. And by using that helps you now begin targeting the people that you need to target, looking at certain industries, that because you may never know. Like for us at that time with my sales team, the legal industry was a sweet spot for us. We just were not paying attention to it. And until we started to pay attention to it, we realized that we were able to close deals a lot faster because we understood certain things. and we didn't have to go down all of this. Now, mind you, at that time, we weren't paying attention to all these things, but these things were never even part of our budget. I always had to kind of fend off my manager from hanging me and my team down because he wanted to make sure he closes sales at the end of the month. And I'll do one last real example before I kind of move to close into something else. Organization I was working with recently, they had a target to do 100 units within a specific period of time. As a matter of fact, they wanted to do it before the end of the year. They started at 45 days before the year end. All right. So they were giving themselves 45 days. And I had to ask the gentleman, I said, I don't understand why you would start it in 45 days why you would push up a campaign like this with a 45-day timeline where you are closing your office in 45 days and your sales cycle is 60. Why would you do that? Because we have the data that says the sales cycle is 60, but you want to push. And we're already seeing that the sales reps, they have challenges in forecasting. So this is where we knew where the sales training had to put the focus on in terms of making the reps more efficient in managing deals. The leads were coming in, but in terms of managing the deals, because they were an addition to that 60-day sales cycle. So again, so I'm looking at it I give it to you from a company perspective as well, because those things are extremely important for us to pay attention to, right? So I want to switch back across a little bit to the solution. So yes, the solution is this webinar, kind of planting the seeds in your mind to start paying attention to those things some more, right? And using the tool and manipulating the tool to fit your specific needs. If you are using a CRM, I'm a big fanboy and advocate for HubSpot. So all of my HubSpot users, there were a few of you inside of here who said, yes, they use HubSpot. Well, based upon the version of HubSpot that you have from starter go up, you do have access to this. So notice on the right-hand side here, it tells you average deal age. So this is basically saying your deals take 72 days to close. When you really start paying, when you really start paying attention to it, you can line that up. Because I do remember there was one customer that said to me when we were looking at their stuff inside of HubSpot, she said that is accurate. Yeah, so understanding, so the system just really reflects, and it's a faster way of pulling certain things up, right? If you look down to the bottom, it's going to tell you things like what your average deal size is. If you look on the bottom left-hand side, yeah. So again, the data is here, so you don't always have to do it. So outside of using an Excel, which can be cumbersome, we know how things can go with Excel, right? But you also have a system, whatever CRM you're using, hopefully it's as good as HubSpot plugged there, right? But you do have a system that helps you do that. For those of us who are in the space of in leadership, if you pay attention to the right-hand side of this, you do have, if you look at the last section where it says sales outcomes, again, HubSpot is going to track average deal size, deal loss reasons, or deal velocity, sales velocity, like how quickly are you doing this? It will actually measure the speed of some of your sales reps. So why is some sales reps closing at a faster rate as opposed to other sales reps? Again, this is where you take some areas of your training. So you look to see what some sales reps are doing, and you try to inculcate it in the culture of your organization for other reps, especially those new people, because you want them to be able to do the right things. You don't have to take it from one person, but look to see what are the best practices throughout your organization, pull the data, and now use that to train the rest of your company. Yeah. So this is sort of the end. I know we said we want to do 11:50 is when we're supposed to end. So we're 11:52. I want to make sure I'm be respectful of your time. All right. Oh, somebody was asking me on the point on real estate. Okay, so I'll jump to that really, really quickly. Just let me go this and I could easily come back. Right. So if you are looking for resources, folks, if you go to the website, OPAAT-SWY.com, we have been working extremely hard. I've been trying my best to make sure that I stick to real scenarios that we experience as sales professionals, as entrepreneurs, as marketers. So if you're in the space of sales and an entrepreneur, this is here for you. All right. Those are some of the most recent, and I would like to say maybe most important not KPIs, but resources at this time. This one at the end here has actually been one of the most trending ones on the internet so far for us based upon our region. And for those of us in marketing, right, and also sales again, building a pipeline, that's going to maybe be another webinar coming up later on in 2024, first, second or fourth week in January. Trends as to what Alex Moore, we kind of pulled some data coming from information coming from a colleague of ours called Alex Moore, and we kind of broke this out as a 10-point thing for folks who are going into 2024. And for my sales managers, I am going to, no disrespect to anybody, we do have a gap in the sales leadership space, and it is extremely important that we work on filling that gap to be able to better support. I think sales managers have been overwhelmed with more desk work than having the ability for them to improve their own skills and become better sales practitioners, and that's unfortunate. But sales managers really need to move away from doing most of these administrative things and really work on coaching and pushing their teams to do the right things with strategies and stuff like that. Just my takeaway based upon what I would have seen. And just to kind of go quickly back on the point here with real estate, I was just indicating that with real estate, the template is basically the same. Excuse me, but you have the ability to manipulate it. Everyone within very soon after the end of this webinar, you will receive a series of things that's coming down in an email. Check the email, check the links and everything else, because you have this is now yours. So you can remove everything that you see as to what is not important to you. You can go ahead and delete it, basically if it's not in your space. But at the end of the day, it's a resource I put together for myself that has helped me tremendously. I use HubSpot, so I've learned how to now get this information inside of HubSpot. But in the absence of having a tool like the CRM, then definitely use this and just learn a little bit more about your business, and you go from there. All right. So that's my time. If anybody wants to just maybe jump on quickly to see as to how this may have impacted them, I will appreciate it. Other than that, the next webinar is going to be in 2024, early 2024, maybe the 16th of January from there. Yeah.
Lyndon, there's a question in the
Oh,
chat
there
just
is?
to confirm.
If
Just
you
to
could just repeat it.
confirm what version of HubSpot they're looking for confirmation of which version of HubSpot gives you the deal information that you're speaking about.
Starter and above. So from starter and above, you'll be able to get that information. All right, we are gonna have so for those of you who are HubSpot users, again, we do have a HubSpot for beginners and up series that's going to be coming out as well. But we'll keep you all informed as to what specifically you need to have, because you need to be at a particular stage within HubSpot to be at the advanced level. And for the free and starter versions, we'll kick you off with something good to go from there. All right. All right. So thank you, folks. This is now the end. I do appreciate you sharing this particular time with me. And if you feel free to reach out if you have any particular questions, if you want to talk a little bit about your numbers, that's why I'm here. Feel free to reach out to Andrea. Andrea, can you just tell them where they can get access to you, please?
All right. So you can find me on LinkedIn under my name, Andrea Ragu, on Instagram and Facebook at your virtual CFO 868.
Cool. All right. So have a good Tuesday afternoon, everyone. Take care and peace.